Good afternoon, friends. It's Steve with Real Progressives. Today's discussion is to inoculate the 99% from the bullshit of Donald Trump, of Hillary Clinton, of neoliberalism, and all the propaganda that we are infected by on a daily basis. We need a real proper vaccine against bullshit. And the way to do that, my friends, is a knowledge movement. A movement where we educate one another, where each one teach one. What we have to do to ever clear ourselves of the stain and taint of the Hillary Clinton movement, of the Donald Trumpers, and to prevent them ever from coming to the surface again. It is all about knowledge. It's all about each one teach one. And it's all about us knowing better. Knowing better. Right now, you're going to look around and you're going to see people that will make excuses for really, really, really bad candidates. For really, really, really bad stories in the mainstream media. For really, really stupid occurrences around the world. They'll make excuses for them. They will suck right into them. They will repeat them. They will get excited about nonsensical things. Things that have no basis in anything, have no value, no long-lasting value whatsoever. They will get excited about Donald Trump's comb-over. They will get excited about a friggin' blimp of Donald Trump floating over the UK. They will get excited, and millions of people come to Washington, D.C. to fight about Donald Trump's tax returns. And I can tell you right now, that if we don't understand what neoliberalism is, what neoliberalism isn't, and how to defeat it, then we're going to keep thinking that people like Hillary Clinton are a lesser evil. We're going to keep inventing a new Donald Trump. We're going to keep hating our immigrant friends. We're going to keep going to war. We're going to keep doing things that have absolutely no value whatsoever to the 99%. So let's talk a little bit about neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a belief, okay, that the private sector is king. Neoliberalism is a belief that we should go to private sector solutions for our needs. Neoliberalism is a belief in free markets and allowing financialization of our existence, like supporting Wall Street, as opposed to Main Street. Neoliberalism isn't just Republican or Democrat. Neoliberalism is a massive, filthy, disgusting ideology that permeates not only the duopoly, but countries around the world. Neoliberalism makes way for corporate giants to come in and plunder resources. Neoliberalism allows people to be the one that bear the weight and pressure of a failed economy versus putting the weight and pressure on the federal government. Neoliberalism is the description of the ideology that people like Hillary Clinton put forward and Donald Trump in his own sick, perverse, fascist way. Let me tell you, you, the people, we, the people, we only win when we stop thinking because they tickle our ear with progressive language that in any way, shape, or form makes them progressive. We also need to be very, very clear that the reason we get shit is because we accept shit because we are partisan in nature. So many of us will make excuses for the Democratic Party as opposed to hold them accountable for not following through. So many of us will sit there and watch television and we'll watch these protests and we'll watch all this stuff. And I ask you to be critical and ask yourself, what is coming from these protests? What is coming from these actions? Is it just bleeding off energy from people allowing them to vent about an unseemly situation? Or is there something genuine coming from this? The reason why the establishment doesn't quake in its boots when most of us are fighting against the establishment. The reason why they don't quake in their boots is because we're not educated, because we're not organized, and because they know that we've got to go to work the next day. They know we can't sustain a campaign to take them down. So the people themselves, this is the worst part. Many of us look for information in bite-sized bumper sticker quotes. That's why Twitter goes crazy. Because if you can fit it in 240 characters, they're happy. They can memorize that. They prefer it to be maybe 25 characters. They want it short. They want it concise. They want it to go ding, ding, ding when you hear it. But the answers are not always in a bite-sized format. The answers are not always in bite-sized format. Sometimes the answer requires just a little bit more information than fits on a bumper sticker. And so if you really want to defeat the duopoly, if you really want to defeat neoliberalism, if you really want to bring about the public purpose, which includes green energy by the state, not by some private corporation coming up finally deciding it's profitable. I'm talking about the state actually investing and pushing and demanding conversion to green energy now. If you want a healthcare system, not just some bastardized ACA that is a push out to private sector insurance that you cannot afford to use for surgery because the affordable care is not so affordable. If you want a national health service where you walk in and there's no fear of going bankrupt, there's no fear of not being able to get the surgery you need, when you understand we can fund these things, and you don't accept their lies about tough choices, and you don't allow their lies about, well, you know, the country's hurting, we gotta pull up our bootstraps and we gotta tighten our belts because the country's broke. When you know to call out the bullshit, you can defeat that. When you tell me that families are splitting up because they can't afford to take care of life, when you tell me families are not going on vacations or not even living in healthy food, they don't even have good nutrition, when you're telling me that it's because we can't afford it, I'm telling you, you're lying. I'm telling you this is a lie. This is the neoliberal lie that keeps us begging for crumbs, that keeps us sedated with bullshit, that gets us going to marches for Donald Trump's tax returns. And what came of it? Really, what came of it? Not a goddamn thing. Not a goddamn thing. Those people could have been there demanding a New Deal. They could have been doing what they did back in the day when Richard Nixon, a Republican, passed the EPA into existence. They could have been doing all kinds of stuff. Now, let me tell you something. A federal job guarantee in the United States, we could afford it just like that. People serving their local communities. Kids don't even go to music class anymore. Do you realize that kids go maybe once a month to music? Or they go to gym class every third week? They don't do, it used to be every day. Kids don't do any of these things. If it's not just in between the lines, they've wrecked it. We could enhance our public education just like that. But because they make you believe that they've got to make tough choices, that we got to tighten our belts, that we're worried about China owning us, you allow neoliberalism to run rampant. And then when the Democrats come in, the corporate establishment centrist Democrats that have no interest in serving us, when you allow them to come in and say, well, we can certainly provide affordable college for people, we'll just make it for people that are making $100,000 or less, or $125,000 or less. Well, what happens when the rents in New York City are $4,000 a month for a shitty flat? What happens when the cost of going, you got to be making $110,000 just to live in a shitty one-bedroom flat. Do you understand? This idea of really big numbers makes us feel good, like we're going after the rich. Let me tell you, it isn't the people making $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, even $300,000 a year. It's the people making millions and millions of dollars a year that are keeping us down here, fighting amongst ourselves for the last table scraps. And that is neoliberalism, because now what they've done is they've made it so you and I, in order for us to get anything, we've got to go take out a credit card at 25%. We've got to go get a personal loan at 15%. We've got to go ahead and refinance our home for another 8 to 10% interest. We've got to go out there and do all these things at interest because we have to borrow money. And because we people, regular people that don't have a printing press, that aren't monetarily sovereign, have to forsake our entire future so we can go to school, get trained for some corporation that could have paid for it, or the U.S. government could have paid for it, we in turn carry that 125,000 pound albatross known as student debt to our graves. And our kids do without because we got to pay for this student debt. Why do we pay for student debt? Neoliberalism. We could eradicate student debt just like that, but we allow the neoliberals to make us believe that we've got to make tough choices. Do you understand how this works? Do you understand this? This right here, my friends, is the neoliberal trick to make you believe the government can't do it. It's too broke. It's inept. We gotta reinvent government. Remember Brother Bill Clinton? We gotta reinvent government. We gotta make it leaner. We gotta cut here. We gotta cut there. We gotta cut there. Bullshit. They went ahead and pushed everybody off of welfare, gave it a 5-year lifetime possibility, and gave it a work requirement. How many single moms got screwed in that deal? Thank you, Brother Bill. But nobody was there talking about it. Brother Bill's fucking the goddamn balanced budget bullshit that he did destroyed the economy for decades. Do you understand? They sucked money out of the economy, deleted it, and it made us all rush to Wall Street, made us all rush to lend to get money from debt. Us, private sector debt, you and I, in debt. And what happens when we cap out on our debt? Our debt, our ability to take in money. We go to payday lenders and we end up forsaking our lives. We don't need to cut shit. Do you understand? This is the neoliberal lie. We're out of money. We got to cut things. You know what? We may want to cut the military, but it's because we don't want to bomb the shit out of people. We don't cut the military because we don't have enough money to go around. That is a neoliberal lie that they continue to tell us, and we continue to steal from our own future because we say we don't have the money, when money is created by keystrokes. Keystrokes. Not some gold, not some rich person, nothing. Let's make the rich irrelevant and do it without them. Get the fuck out of our way. Lead, follower, get out of here, right? Tell the rich people you are no longer in control of our lives. Stop waiting for us to raise taxes before we do nice things. Fuck them. Get them out of there. They're nothing but parasites. They're nothing but parasites. Make them irrelevant. Render them irrelevant and pass legislation. Like I said, Nixon didn't want the EPA, I promise you, but damn it if the people didn't force that Republican hand, and he did it. You want to say Donald Trump won't do it? He's a douchebag, he's this, he's that, he's got a bad comb over. Well, you haven't seen what the people united can make happen. You go ahead and you sit there and you start learning and teaching others and watch the wildfire spark and watch big things happen. They can only keep us down if we keep drinking the shit Kool-Aid. And the shit Kool-Aid is we're broke, we can't afford nice things, and if it weren't for the benevolence of people like Bill Gates and all the wealthy people in the world, we couldn't have nice things. That's the lie. They make you worship the rich. They make you chase the rich. They make you think the rich are the key to your happiness when they are irrelevant, when we understand that all new money comes from the federal government. And it can spend on us, and it can do it now. There are no tough choices that need to be made. And we keep allowing them to make us feel like there are. It's time for us to get into a knowledge movement. A knowledge movement. A movement where people don't say stupid things. A knowledge movement where we ask questions, not speak from our ignorance. A knowledge movement where we pick up a book, where we talk to one another and each one teach one, so that we can create a tsunami of knowledge amongst the 99%, and we can force them to do our bidding. We need to force them to do our bidding. And it is only going to come when the 99% stop buying the neoliberal lie that we're broke, that China owns us, and all this other redonkulous stupidity that is told over and over again. Oh, the petrodollar, it's all going to collapse. Oh, the Chinese are going to do it, it's all going to collapse. Oh, what about the BRICS? It's all going to collapse. What about this? It's all going to collapse. Oh my God, let me watch Alex Jones at night. It's all going to collapse. The neoliberal lie, the neocon lie, has created more xenophobia in America than you will ever know. The neocon, neoliberal lie has made white people hate black people even more, and black people despise white people even more, because they're competing for the same breadcrumbs at the bottom. And it is a neoliberal lie that creates that scenario. It is a neoliberal lie that pretends that the United States government isn't the owner of the patent of the US dollar, and it can spend that US dollar anytime it wants. Congress alone has the purse strings. Article 1, Section 8 of your US Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, read it sometime. Get to know it, love it. They have created more lies to distract us, to keep us from pushing forward. And real progressives ain't going to allow it. Ain't going to allow it anymore. And we are expecting you all to help us, each one teach one, to keep building this tsunami, to make sure that candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and our friend last night, we had a great lady come on here from Washington. I mean, we are talking about Miss Smith. These are people that get how economics works. They get how federal financing works. They get that we aren't broke. They get that we can afford all of this stuff. And it takes us to push the narrative so that you don't keep seeing these vote blue sycophants running around telling us, just vote blue. Because they're afraid to move the needle on truth. They're afraid to tell people, shut up. We can afford everything. We can afford it all. We create the money. Stop telling me we don't have enough money. We create it freely by keystrokes. Stop lying. Stop lying. It's up to the people. Forget the politicians. Stop looking at the parties. The parties themselves are catering to mass ignorance. And they are catering to this neoliberal lie. No matter how much you think they're in your... We have to change their minds by proving to them that we know what the hell we're talking about. Whenever somebody says, well, the petrodollar, you can see the people up top laughing and snickering. They believe that stupid shit yet again. Keep talking about petrodollars, please. We're going to keep raping your country. But no, go talk petrodollars, please. Because we're just chuckling away. Oh my God, they're talking about the private Federal Reserve again. These bozers are doing... And they're running off and they're taking us to the woodshed. While people are sitting there thinking they're so woke and cool. But this is the reality. What they're doing is they're sucking the gross domestic product, the nation's income, up to the 1%. While we sit there and believe that we can't have nice things because of the private Federal Reserves. All this other bullshit. So I'm going to give you a 2-minute quick overview of MMT. And then the rest is up to you. There is tons of videos out there. There is 1 million articles out there. There's no excuse for not knowing this stuff. There's no excuse on relying some dude from a fire pit telling you his wrong idea of what MMT is. There's no excuse for listening to a neo-Maxi Zunjweeby that doesn't understand this. There's no excuse, because there are experts out there. So anybody that listens to some knucklehead that doesn't know this stuff and uses them as the barometer of truthiness, you're in the wrong game. Just stop. Okay? So here's the 2-minute overview. Number 1, The Congress alone created the Federal Reserve. Period. It has amended its charter 1,000,000 times. It could amend it again. It controls the banks. It alone can regulate the banks. It has chosen not to. The United States government created the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is a law. It is a patent. It is owned by the United States, just like the UK owns the pound sterling, just like Japan owns the yen, just like Australia owns the Australian dollar, and just like Canada owns the Canadian dollar. Okay? Unlike the European Union, which uses the euro, which is controlled by the ECB, which is not a state-run thing. Okay? So, here's the deal. The United States has a free-floating, non-convertible, sovereign fiat currency. Fiat meaning by decree. It is backed by one thing and one thing only, a tax. By taxing you in that dollar and payable only in that dollar, try, if you don't agree with me, try and pay your taxes in Bitcoin someday. And watch how quickly you go to jail, or they just laugh at you. Okay? Try not paying your taxes and see what happens. So the tax-driven money of the UK, of Japan, of Australia, of Canada, and many other sovereign nations is the use of that tax to drive the need for said currency. Many, many moons ago, the king wanted people that were sitting there hanging out, farming and fishing. He wanted them to help him build aqueducts and roads and other things. And he came out there and he said, well, guys, I'd love you to come help me build this road. So they used to make them slaves. But then he said, well, wait a minute, these are our people. So we'll give them a coin with my face on it. And we'll say, here, I'll pay you this coin if you go build me a road, if you go build me a castle, if you go build me whatever. And the guy looks at it and goes, I don't need a gold coin, does nothing for me. I'm busy farming my land, I'm busy making my potatoes, I'm busy catching fish and hunting deer, whatever it is, right? So they're going out there and they're doing that, and the king goes, yeah, you got a point. You don't need that gold coin really either, do you? So I'm going to go and impose a tax on your hut, a hut tax. And now you need to pay that tax in the king's gold with my mugshot on it, or you can't keep your home. So guess what? Oh shit, I better get some of them coins with the king's face on it, right? So now all of a sudden they say, Mr. King, what do I do to get pieces of gold with your face on it? He goes, funny you should ask. I'm going to pay you 10 pieces of gold if you build this roadway for me. And they go, oh, okay, I'll do that. So they go ahead and they build a road and they get 10 pieces of gold. It's like, yay, thank you so much, Mr. King. The gold itself had no value. It was nothing. It was no big deal. That's just what they used to mint the coin. But the real deal was it was only the king's gold. He didn't just accept gold from Sammy and Joey. It was the king's gold. Now flash forward to the early days. Back in the early days, the settlers, the colonial people, would trade in tobacco. They'd burn this thing. Once it was done, once the debt was paid, they'd burn it. Flash forward a little bit further. They had paper notes. When the note was paid, you paid it off, they burned it. Well, in the U.S. in the modern times now, they don't burn it. What they do is they delete it because it's electronic dollars. We're not dealing in paper dollars everywhere. We're dealing in electronic dollars. So when we have our taxes are paid to the king, as it were, or to this case, the IRS, once it goes through, does its thing, says, yep, dollar spent one time, dollar deleted one time. Once it comes in as a tax, it is deleted. So when we sit there and go, we need tax money to pay for programs, damn it. Where the country's broke without these keystrokes. We've run out of keystrokes. What do we do? What do we do? We're out of keystrokes. God damn. How do you run out of keystrokes, people? How do you run out of keystrokes? Help a brother out. How do you run out? Well, I've done broke the nubs of my fingers off. I can't keystroke anymore. And every time I do it, it's like my fists are banging on the keyboard. So we're running out of money here. I need somebody to do it with fingers. I mean, that's the only way you run out of money. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. But they've been doing this, and they know it for a long time. Because they will spend money on the military immediately without... Did your taxes go up for that $800 billion they sent to the military? No? How come? because taxes don't actually pay for shit. Taxes are used to drive the currency, to make you need the currency. Okay? To make you need that currency, they impose that tax. And it's also used to keep inflation at a certain point. We can raise taxes, we can lower taxes. It's a tool, it's a brake and a gas pedal for the economy. It's nothing more than that. It doesn't pay for anything. So when you hijack healthcare because you want to raise taxes, how many people have you killed that needed healthcare? How many people are you guilty of murdering for trying to raise taxes and preventing us from getting healthcare when it was unnecessary? Because quite frankly, an efficient healthcare system may actually require us to lower taxes. Not raise them to pay for it, but lower them, because the economic activity is more efficient. Interesting, right? Now what happens? We talk about inflation. Are we at full employment? No. Are our factories cranking at 100%? No. Do we have real resources available to us to produce goods and services? Yes. Do people have a need for health care? Do people have a need for cars? Do people have a need for houses? Do people have a need for clothing? Do people have a need for goods and services and public works? Yes, yes, yes. Why are all of our bridges rated C and D instead of A and B? Why is that? Because we didn't have enough money to pay to get the bridges and stuff fixed? Bullshit. We don't have enough work. We got to have a UBI because we don't have enough work. Why are all of our bridges rated C and D if we don't have enough work, snapperhead? Automation ain't fixing that. Captain Kirk was still employed. Why are you saying that? This is the neoliberal plot, because what they want to do is they want to shove you through the door with a UBI, take away all the public space, take away all the services, and say, shut up, you got your UBI, now go be good and be gone. There's no price anchor, there's no wage anchor, there's no change to anything. All of a sudden they got you by the short hairs, and then they raise prices because there's no production from a UBI, and they can jack it up, and that, my friends, is inflation. So, MMT, the sovereign fiat currency that's non-convertible to gold, is backed by a tax, and only a tax. It's backed by the whole faith and credit of the United States and all of its ability to produce goods and services and to buy goods and services. All right. Now, MMT talks about the national debt. What is the national debt? Let's talk about the national debt. Many, many moons ago, when we were on the gold standard, back before 1971, we had to sell bonds and stuff like that. We didn't really have to, but we did. What is a bond? Well, it's bought only in US dollars. You can only buy these things with your existing US dollars. If you buy $1 trillion, you had to have $1 trillion to begin with. It's not like we're borrowing your money. They're taking that money and they delete it. It's gone. And then when you want it back after it's matured, they keystroke it back in and voila, it's back with interest. Where'd that interest come from? Keystrokes. Not some gold in the ground, not some oil, not some petrodollar from the Rothschilds and the Illuminati. Keystrokes. So when we say that we're in debt to China, China has bought and sold goods and services with the U.S. They get paid in U.S. dollars. What do they do with those U.S. dollars? They park them at the Fed. They just park them there, and they use it to facilitate their trade in the United States. They wouldn't dump U.S. dollars. But if they did dump U.S. dollars, what happens to the U.S. dollars? Well, guess what? Our economy goes boom, because that money gets spent somewhere. It doesn't get burned. It gets spent. Can you imagine people acting like our net national assets, the sum total of every untaxed dollar, is somehow or another a bad thing? This is the mindset of neoliberalism, corrupting your brain, corrupting your mind, taking away the ability to change the world. The debt is nothing more than savings accounts with interest paid by keystrokes. Nothing more. Do you understand this? It's like, yes, can you feel it? Can you feel it? Can you feel it? That's what I'm talking about. We're talking about nothing burgers, but that's what they use to keep us on the sidelines. Then the next one, the famous worthless one. We gotta reduce the deficit. Why do we gotta reduce the deficit? What is the deficit? The deficit is the sum total of the difference between the amount of taxes received and the amount of government spending. Well, what happens when we pay more taxes than we spend? We have less money in the economy. What happens when we have less money in the economy, my friends? Oh shit, we have a recession, don't we? Oh snap! So you mean to tell me that Brother Bill's bullshit with a balanced budget and surplus was really horrific for the economy and for the 99%? To quote Heisenberg, you're goddamn right. You're goddamn right. It was a big, massive fuck you to the 99%. A big, massive fuck you to the 99%. And so when you hear Robert Reich, who is a neoliberal peddler, a nice guy, cherubic smile, great presentation, lots of money backing him. He is a neoliberal. Paul Krugman is a neoliberal. Barack Obama was a neoliberal. Hillary Clinton, a uber neoliberal. Donald Trump, a fascist neoliberal. All neoliberals. Do you realize that no matter which way you go, you get bedside manners or no bedside manners, but you equally get a serving size portion of neoliberalism? Neoliberalism is a plague, and it is export. It's our chief export from the United States. It goes to every country where we try to rip apart their social safety nets, their social public purpose spending, and their plans, etc. And then we try to institute private sector solutions where we make money, we drain resources, we absorb them to the 1%, and we leave the people destitute without a boat to row in. And then we push them to private sector debt. Now they, the little people, are sitting there trying to figure out how they're going to keep the lights on in their home because they've got bill upon bill upon bill upon bill upon bill. Because the U.S. government has abdicated its responsibility of Article 1, Section 8 to spend on the public purpose, to spend on the people, the power of the purse strings. We keep accepting that, well, you know, some people just don't want to work hard, you know. These people over here, they just don't work hard, blah, blah, blah. Bootstraps, pull them up by the bootstraps. Neoliberalism right there. Calvinism, neoliberalism made into a toxic waltz, okay? This is what I'm telling you. MMT is the silver bullet of destroying this stuff. Let me tell you another favorite to give you a little bit more about MMT. There is currency issuers, and then there is currency users. Currency issuer would be the federal government. A currency user would be the state of California. A currency user cannot just create its own currency out of nowhere. It has to spend the money that's in circulation, which means they have to tax, which means they have to have businesses coming in there. And if they have businesses coming in there, businesses are looking for sweet tax breaks, aren't they, people? So you look at Kansas, and what happened in Kansas? Well, they cut the safety nets. They cut the taxes. They encouraged the businesses to come in there, and they just siphon more out. They've lost their public schools. They've lost everything. It's going to hell in a handbasket. Neoliberalism. Texas will cut the bottom out of corporate rates. All the businesses go down to Texas. Well, there's no public purpose spending there, and the rest of the country is left destitute. That's the race to the bottom. Currency users, like the state of Texas, require more business to be down there because they need tax revenue. They need commerce. They need people wanting to be there for jobs. They need that. But they leave the rest of the country in dire ill repair. Currency issuer, the federal government, can give everybody what they need. It can literally give us single payer, or better, a national health service. It could give us a job guarantee for every American that wants a job, with living wages and living benefits to set the bar so the private sector can no longer block our ability to survive. Instead of pushing us into private debt, we have a job guarantee. Now think about this. If you have a job guarantee and you're a single mom, or you're in a bad domestic violence situation and you're sticking around because you don't have any ability to get health care, you don't have a way to get a job, and this son of a bitch keeps knocking your teeth out every night of the week, telling you fell down the stairs, but really he's just kicking your ass. Now all of a sudden, a federal job guarantee, you pick up and you go to Colorado, you get your weed, you get your clean air, and you get a job. And you get to get away from jackass over there that was kicking the shit out of you. Or you can leave Flint, Michigan and go somewhere else with fresh water. Do you see how I'm saying neoliberalism has dumbed you down to the point where you think we can't have nice things? All you think about is the coming apocalypse. You think about the end of times. You think about the economic collapse. You think about all these things, but you don't think about the possibility of what we could do. They purposely dumbed you down to make it so you don't think about what you could dream, a better tomorrow. Imagine a better tomorrow where we all prosper. Prosperous for all of us. And what about environmental justice? Let's talk about the environment MMT style for a minute. You want to tell me that we've got to wait for Exxon to decide that they're going to do green energy? You want to tell me that we've got to wait for Mobil Oil to come up with green energy? You want to tell me that we've got to wait for Bill Gates to come up with green energy? Our federal government yesterday could have retrofitted every smokestack in America, could have changed out every engine in every car, could have done anything they wanted to because they have the power of the purse. They could have done it like that, but they didn't. Why is that? They didn't do it because ultimately horrible, evil people would focus on a politician like Bernie, disgusting people, instead of focusing on the solution so that we get everyone pushing in the same direction. Evil people try to poke holes. Stupid people try to poke holes. Dum-dums try to poke holes instead of focusing on the bigger message, which is the economics and the people. Instead of pointing to politicians, it's about us owning our responsibility of each one teach one and expanding our knowledge base. But there's always somebody that doesn't have a platform, doesn't have a forum, doesn't have the ability to speak, doesn't know the information, that sits there and pokes holes in it. Ignore them. They are not worth your time. They are a time waste. You focus on keep going forward. And if Bernie's wrong, if Jill is wrong, and I've called them both out many, many times. Call them out. But focus on the people getting their shit together so that we can have a movement, irrespective of what party we're in, irrespective of where we fit, because parties divide people, right? Parties divide people. Politicians divide people. Bernie's a sellout. Bernie's a god. Don't say anything bad about Bernie. Bernie sucks. He's a sheepdog. Bernie's my god. Do you understand? I won't focus on that because that's not my focus. We're here to educate people on economics. You want to play God worship of politicians? Do it elsewhere. Do it elsewhere. Show me what you got. It ain't much. Focus, my friends. Focus, focus, focus on defeating neoliberalism, of educating each other, because politicians have to get elected. And if everybody believes the same old tired garbage about economics that they were told by the neoliberals from yesteryear, then these politicians are going to have to cater to your lack of knowledge. It's up to us. You know that whole thing? It's in our hands. Those hashtags we put out there? It is in our hands. It's in our hands, not theirs. If you want to vote for somebody, knock yourself out. If you want to educate people, point them to the experts. Point them to the founding members of modern monetary theory, like Dr. Stephanie Kelton, like Warren Moser, like L. Randall Wray, like Bill Mitchell. And then the second crop of people within Ben-Zager Institute in terms of Fidel Kaboub, Dr. Stephen Hale. And then the Modern Money Network with Rohan Gray and others. Raul Carril, Nathan Tankus, etc. Start pointing people to the experts. Start reading the experts. Stop reading bullshit from Counterpunch from some dude at a bar stool that sat there and came up with a theory. Start focusing your time on learning the real stuff. And we will win. We will win. But when we allow people to sideline us and clip our legs out with cute little comments and comebacks that have nothing to do with benefiting the people, when we see people that are cowards, that sit there and lurk behind the scenes, always judging instead of doing, judging, ignore them, blow past them, leave them in the dust. The information is there. If they ever want to learn it, it is there for them to learn. But don't waste your time on somebody who's just sitting there being a cynic, trying to be yo coolio. It's time for us to teach each other so that we can be organized, smart, and make the proper demands. No more Trump rallies for his comb over. Let's get the people together to fight for what they need so that we can inspire a new crop of politicians, so we can inspire a new crop of public servants, so we can inspire our local and state government, so we can inspire everyone around us to do the next right thing. That's how we win, folks. Stop looking at politicians as saviors. Stop. No matter how enticing it is, stop. And start owning your own power. Own your own power. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Please help us win this war. Volunteer, donate, whatever. Share this around, like it, comment, you name it. Help us get the word out, because this is how we win, folks. Again, I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a great day, everyone.